How's it going, everybody? I'm Lewis and we've got the new developer blog from the old school RuneScape team going over the poll. This is following on from the poll system developer blog we had the other week, addressing some of the issues the old school RuneScape players had with it, and going over the questions they'll be asking in the poll coming up soon. So let's start with looking at the questions that are aimed at representing everyone fairly. First of all, limiting who can vote on certain questions. It's quite hard for the old school RuneScape team to target specific updates to specific communities because they have to get 75% approval of the entire community to get into the game. So what the old school RuneScape team are suggesting is if an update is completely exclusive to one community, then only that community will get to vote on that question. An example where this will be put in place would be changes to, say, the Deadman mode PJ timer. Only players who play Deadman mode will be affected by that update, so therefore they'll be the only players that get to vote in that question. Whereas if there's an update that seems like it might affect just one community, for example implementing 2,200 plus total level worlds, will actually be polled to the entire community because they do affect other peoples and other communities. If we got 2,200 plus total level worlds, it's going to reduce the number of available worlds to other players, it's going to provide the players with 2,200 plus total level a distinct advantage, and it's possible that some players will lose their home RuneScape worlds. Which I don't know if it's much of an issue these days, but definitely a couple of years ago that would have been a huge issue. In my opinion, this is a great idea in theory, but in practice I fear it's going to crumble to pieces. This stems from a couple of things I feel that I talk about quite a lot when it comes to polls. What if in the future I want to play that piece of content? For example, right now I'm not a Deadman mode player. However, I would maybe like to play it in the future after I finish with my main account. The next question aimed at representing everyone fairly is lowering the threshold for passing a poll. Every single update that has come into Old School RuneScape since Old School RuneScape began has got 75% approval from the entire Old School RuneScape community. However, recently there have been some discussions to lower that. So the Old School RuneScape team will be asking, would you like the requirement for a question to pass a poll to be reduced from 75% to 70%? Please note that this question requires 75% to pass and not 70%. I'm of the opinion that this won't make voting fairer for players. It just means that updates that currently aren't appropriate for Old School RuneScape will be able to come into the game without any improvements. Which is a huge shame. I feel that the 75% approval rating is great in Old School RuneScape. Updates that get over 75% approval have a majority of support, so people can't argue against them. With a recent example of that being Dragon Claws, I voted against it, however it got the 75% approval to get into the game, it's in the game, and we can't argue against it. Updates that get near 75% are good for Old School RuneScape, however they need to be improved. And like I said, if we lower the threshold down to 70%, then that means updates that could potentially be improved won't get the required improvements for Old School RuneScape. Another downside of them lowering it to 70% is that people will then start looking at updates that get 68, 69% approval and complain and say we should get it lowered to 65%, 60%, 50%, where do we stop? I love the idea of having 75% as such a concrete set in stone value because it's such a wonderful solution for the game. Next, we've got a couple of further changes to the poll system. First of all, changing your vote. The Old School RuneScape team will be asking, should it be possible to change how you voted on a poll after you've submitted your response? It will be possible to edit your answers until the poll is closed. That will be a nice quality of life update to the polling system itself. Although, that being said, there's not been many instances where I've submitted a vote and thought, I want to change it, but there definitely have been a few instances of it. The next change is concealing poll results. The Old School RuneScape team will be asking, should the results of a poll be concealed until the poll has ended? I feel that this is unnecessary. However, according to the Old School RuneScape team, players are voting based on how close updates are to passing, which to me is ridiculous and just robbing yourself of a vote. But anyway, if players are doing that, then concealing the results of the poll will definitely help out. And if this question does pass, then I think it'll be very interesting to see how it will affect the results of future polls. And finally, we've got the general poll feedback. This is the last question in this developer blog, and it's more of a survey question than a content question, trying to get the opinions on how much they should be polling content for Old School RuneScape. The Old School RuneScape team will be asking, when players request changes to Old School RuneScape, which of the following describes your feelings? The options are, more things should be done without a poll being required, fewer things should be done without passing a poll, the polls are about right, and of course, skip question. I'm of the opinion that the Old School RuneScape team got the polls about right a couple of years ago. Whereas recently we've seen a lot of changes where they've been introducing updates without polls. I've not had a problem with small bug fixes and small quality of life changes. I feel that bug fixes are issues with content that need to be corrected, and small quality of life changes are issues that are so minuscule, looking at a question in a poll just feels like a waste of time. However, my issue is when big pieces of content come into the game without being polled. And in fact, I would argue essentially all of Zaya came in without a poll, which I find ridiculous. Some of the biggest updates in the entire history of old school RuneScape have come in without a poll. Especially when you think old school RuneScape is such a quintessentially community-based game, every single update they try and do comes in with a poll from the community. So when it comes down to it, I think fewer things should be done without passing a poll. If you want the old school RuneScape team to know what you think about these changes, do so on the forums, and if you want to discuss any of the changes with me, do so in my comments below. If you want to watch my video on the latest old school RuneScape update, please click here for prayer scrolls, quality of life, and a quest. And if you want to watch my video on the latest old school RuneScape news post, please click here for mouse keys, changes, and clarification. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you want to keep up to date with the old school RuneScape updates, DevBlogs, and polls, please subscribe. I've been Lewis, thanks for watching, goodbye.